So in Google Class, or excuse me, in Google Drive, you should have a file shared with you. So you go to your shared with me file, and in there you should see, or folder I mean, in there you should see a file from me called words.txt. You want to right click on that to open up a contextual menu, and you want to download this to your computer. The idea is now it's on your computer in your downloads folder. So now what you have to do is go to Replit and create a new file and add that words file to it. And this file is going to be made in Python 2.7. So you click on a new REPL and you want to go to Python 2.7, this one right here, and call it wordprogram. You can just call it wordprogram. I'm adding sample 2 to it. And so this is where you're going to write the program right here. But we first need to bring in that file, words.txt, that has the 170,000 words. And the way you get that in here is you go to the 3 dots by the file right here and say upload file. You want to navigate to downloads and you should be able to find your words.txt file. All right, I already had one, so that's why it did that dash there, but we'll use this one. Hit open and you'll now have that file in here. If you click on it, it'll show you what it is. It's a big file of 170,000 plus words. So it may take a second or two for that to show up. And so here's the list. It's all the words in alphabetical order. This is edited. I tried to take out some bad words, but you never know. Something might slip by. If you see one, I'll try to remove it, but they're just words, so calm down. So anyway, it'd be very difficult to analyze all of these words by hand. There's over 170,000 of them. So what you want to do is to write a file now that will analyze the contents of the file. I think my file has like the letter A missing, so I'm adding that right now. So you go to main.py, and here's how you open and close a file. So you create a file object, and we'll just call it F. And it's to assign the value of a built-in function called open. Open takes 2 arguments. The first argument is a string, and that's the file that you want to open. It needs to be named exactly how you see it over to the left. If yours happens to have some numbers behind the word words, you can rename the file and just rename it words.txt. The second argument you have to do is separated by a comma, and this is also a string, and this is the modality or mode you want to open the file. We just want to read the contents, so that's called R. Put R there. Before you do anything else, go down a few lines and close the file. That's f.close, empty parentheses. It's something so easy to forget to do, so that's why I always kind of do that right after I open a file. I write the code that closes it later, so I don't forget. Now we can do what's known as traversing the file. We can look at each line using a for loop, and I could call it for line, but since every line has a word, I'm going to refer to it as for line in word, or excuse me, for word in F. So for every line or word in that file, colon, hit enter. And if you just wanted to see what was there, you could say print word and run it, and it will print the words. Now they're skipping every other line because at the end of each word there's an invisible new line character that you can't see, but we have to remove it so it'll look better. So what we're going to do here is get your cursor at that colon, hit enter, you're still indented, and we're going to reassign the value of word just a bit. And so you say word is assigned the value of word.split, empty, or excuse me, strip, empty parentheses. And what that does, that removes that new line character, and now it's just printing every line, or every word, without skipping a line. So you can hit stop, and then you can hit clear. Okay, well, we really don't want to print every word. Say we wanted to print just the long words, really long words. What you could do here, I think you'll see, is I'll put in an if statement here. I think, there we go. And I can look at the length of the word. That's len word. Len word returns how many letters are in the word. And I say, hey, if the length of the word is over 23 characters, colon, and then indent print word, it will now only print the words in the list in the file that are over 23 characters. I think there's around a dozen of them. And there they all are. There's some crazy words there. So anyway, that's all the long words in the list. And what you're going to see me do now is erase that. We were just having fun there. And I'd like to count how many words are in this list. And so what you can do is use what's known as a counter. So I'm going to create a variable called wCount, which stands for word count. And in the beginning, you set it to be 0. It's called initializing the counter. Here I'm writing a note saying word counter. That's just a note to the programmer saying, hey, that's what this is doing. Your program will work without that. And so now, as we look at each word, we're going to increment word count by 1. So it's plus equals 1. And then after the file's closed, we can say how many are in word count. And that'll tell us how many words there are. So we use a print statement for this. And this is how you lay that out. Word count, comma, and then the variable word count will be holding the number of words. And you should see that there are over 172,000. And there they are. That's the number. The next thing I ask you to do is to see if you can display the number of characters in the entire file. And what you do is you look at the length of each word and just keep adding all those numbers up. So we're creating a variable called character count. I don't know why that period shows up, but this is going to be for characters. So we have a separate counter. And now we increment the character count by the length of each word. Okay, so it's going to be C count plus equals the length of the word. And now I can come down to the bottom here and copy that print statement and adjust it for the second print statement, which is character count. And you can see there's over 1.5 million characters in this file. Okay, the next part begins with, we're trying to figure out how many words begin with each letter. So I created a section here called begins with letter, and I create a variable called alphabet and have it equal or set to the value of a string of the alphabet. This will allow us to traverse this string, check each letter one at a time, and open the file and see how many words start with each letter. We'll take the output from this and paste it into a spreadsheet. Here's how this works. You can traverse every letter in the alphabet. And what we're going to do every time we get a new letter from the alphabet is we're going to open the file and keep track of how many times that letter shows up. Okay, so we could call this letter count, if that helps, and we set that to be 0. Now what we're going to do is open up the file. Again for reading. Make sure I remember to close it. And now we're back to here. We're going to traverse every word in the file. Let's strip the word so that it doesn't have that trailing new line character. Now we want to know if the letter that we're looking at begins the word that we're looking at. So we can ask this. If word 0, 0 being the index of how a word begins, or if word 0 happens to equal the letter, that means, say it was the word apple, and apple does begin with the letter A, we would want to increment the letter count then. When this file is closed, we can then print out how many words began with that letter. And so we're going to end up with a list of 26 numbers that correspond to the alphabet. So here we just type in letter count. And so what we'll have here is when we run this, oh, I kind of also wanted to put a pause in this program here. Let me do that. Way we're going to pause a program is just simply use a keyboard prompt saying, just use apostrophes here. Press enter, continue. Whoops, sorry. And I'm actually going to put a couple of new line characters in front of the sentence and at the end of the sentence. This key right here is underneath the delete key or backspace key. It's called an escape character. Here's how it works. When I run this, it gives me the word count and the character count, and then it says press enter to continue. When I do that, these are the words that, these are the numbers that correspond to the words that begin with those letters. And you're going to take these guys, you're going to copy them. And this is how many, this is how many words begin with the letter A, this is how many words begin with the letter B, and so on. So you copy those. Then in the spreadsheet that you're given, you want to come to where it says begins with letter, you want to paste that in right here. And that should correspond with A through Z. So now we can make a chart. And here's an unsorted list, and it's in alphabetical order, and it shows you the distribution of how many words begin with each letter. And you can see that X is the lowest, and by far the highest is S. You could certainly sort this, but it's not necessary. Number of words that begin with each letter of the alphabet. You can certainly sort this if you wanted to. Under data, sort range. Yeah, I have a header row. I want to sort by actually number of words that begin with that letter from the largest to smallest. And then here you have a sorted list of that information. I don't have to do that. I'm really fine with just this chart, and it really doesn't even need to be sorted. You could unsort that chart if you'd like. And that code would look a little bit like this. And so to do this one, it's real similar to how we're doing this one, but instead of just looking at the first letter, we're going to look at every letter and try to count those. Okay. So let's go ahead and maybe just copy this bad boy. It might help us out a little bit, even though we don't need to really refer to alphabet again, but we can still just redefine it. This is contains letter. And so I'm going to paste this in. We got an alphabet again. We're going to traverse it. We're definitely counting the letters. We're going into the word. Here's the word. We strip it, but we're going to do something a little bit different in here. All right. So now that we have a word, we can now traverse every letter in that word. So I can do something like this. For C, for character, I'm going to just use C. For C in word. Now what that allows us to do is to look at every letter. And that's going to be the variable C. And we can ask if C equals the letter that we're looking for, like the letter A the first time through. So if C equals letter, we're going to increment the counter letter count. Okay, just like we did before up here. So much so I could copy that and come down here. So now we're traversing every letter in the word, and if we see that letter occur, we increase the letter count. And of course, the first time through this, it will be the letter A it's looking for, and it will produce all the A's there. So what we want to do here is just to make sure that we're seeing the right information, because remember, the first one is begins with, and the second one is it contains. So I might just say here, print contains is below. And we might also just do another pause. So I'm going to copy this, the code that allows me to pause my program, and I'm going to kind of do one of these. So now the first time through, these numbers will be what I already have. That's the begins with numbers. Now I want to know contains, okay? And so that's down here. I don't need begins with letter anymore. We're actually doing contains letter. Begins is way up here. Alrighty, so I'll pause between the two. And this time I'm only going to copy the second one because that's all I need. So now I run this again. Maybe, we'll see. Let's clear this. And this is the begins with numbers. We've already put that in the spreadsheet. Now we're going to do the contains. Of course, there's a lot of letter A's in this program, but not so many B's. So this program is a little bit slower. It's not only traversing every letter of the alphabet, it's traversing every word in the file 26 times. This is not a very fast program, but it will do what we want, and eventually we'll get to the Z's, and there we are. So now this last string or list of output is the second sheet that you need to do. So you copy that, go to your spreadsheet, and you're now pasting in here those numbers. So now that you can make a chart based on this. How often does each letter appear in this file? And this is what we're looking at here. Looks like E is the champion. Number of times each letter appears in word.txt. And that's pretty interesting. And again, you can certainly do a pie chart. You could also sort it. And so let's take a look at what a sorted file would look like, or a sorted chart, excuse me. Most frequent to least frequent. And there we go. The most popular letter in the English language, according to this list of words, is the letter E, followed by S, which is the one that starts the most words. And then J is the least frequently used letter. So I just wanted you to see how to do some programming in Python and how to open a file and read it and maybe analyze its contents. And so if you could submit to me the URL of your program that you wrote, that's this guy right here of your program, copy that, put that in the first sheet of your spreadsheet. So just right here, I would just need that to be placed in there. And that way I can verify and see that you wrote the program. And that's the assignment. So you just have to turn in this file that has the URL of your Python program and a couple of charts that you made. One on which words begin with the most which letter begins the most words, and of course which letters used the most often. Thank you so much. Thanks for turning this into Google Classroom.